And I'm so excited and honored to present our next presenters. Jennifer Phelps, who is my mom, is a lead AP and landscape architect. Joseph Kennedy will be joining her, and Joseph is a designer, writer, and artist who specializes in regenerative building, ecological design, and community development. In this innovative hands-on design process, we'll be exploring how to build resilient, net positive communities.
Well, welcome everybody. Our talk is going to be on Envision a Resilient Future, Set Your Sights to Net Positive. And I'll turn it over to Joe and then we'll introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Joe Kennedy, and thank you all for joining us. I'm very excited to be with you all today. And I just wanted to let you know that the idea of resilience and some of the conversation we're having around resilience began back in the 1980s when I was studying architecture at UC Berkeley, at least for me. And at that time, California was at the lead of energy efficiency and solar design. And so we as students were introduced to this and encouraged to explore this in our designs. And so that's where it all started. And eventually I became very involved with the natural building movement as a designer, author, and educator. And even though it was considered kind of a fringe hippie notion, regenerative design, I kept going with it because of its huge potential. And it's not just for the planet, but for ourselves as well. And I'm convinced more than ever that pushing our attention towards a net positive future through building stronger, more well-connected communities will create a future that we really want to live in, that excites me, and it brings me here today.
And hi everybody, I'm Jennifer Phelps, like Megan said, and I also have a degree in architecture from UC Berkeley, like Joe. And I shifted gears a bit and became a licensed landscape architect. And as part of our code of ethics, we pledged to be stewards of the earth, which deeply resonated with me. And especially when my children were young and the mama bear in me really came out and kicked into high gear, that although a couple years ago, my now adult daughters both decided that they didn't want to have children because they felt like their future was too uncertain and too volatile, and they just don't feel like that's a wise decision. And this was really a wake-up call for me. I realized how dire they feel our future is, and that we're really facing the potential of this existential threat. So I started looking for ways to become more actively engaged in the question of how do we create a resilient, equitable world, and how can we, meaning you and me together, really create a better future for this next generation of young people and their children. So I believe we have the power to make these changes and change the course of where we're headed. And I have a lot of hope for our future, and that's why I'm doing this.
So what does a sustainable, resilient future look like? And asking this question, envisioning the answer together, is what we find to be the first vital step in creating the world we'd like to see. Once we have a target, we can move forward with what's possible. We have the power to take action and help prevent the worst effects of climate change and other interrelated issues that have been compromising the planet for the last 70 years. Today, we're going to explore some fun and innovative design processes to help you envision a future that puts regenerative goals into action through a holistic, net positive design bit to get at some new ways of thinking.
Our focus is on the process. So it's really a brainstorming process that we want to use to create new thought patterns and find ways to reach net positive outcomes in a collaborative manner. So our goal is to get us thinking beyond net zero, which is kind of what is the basis of today. There's a lot of net zero goals. How can we get to net positive, which we'll talk about a little bit later, what exactly that means. But climate change is happening faster than predicted, and there's no time to waste in addressing these urgent challenges that we now face. And how can we quickly take action to prevent the worst effects? And what can you do personally to make your neighborhoods more resilient? So we're aiming for communities that are more equitable, using more creative processes to get there, and are more empowering for everyone. Our vision is that by embracing new ways of living, we're going to create a better life for everyone, and that's what today's session is all about. So we've come up with this new process that can be applied to different types of challenging problems, and we'll show you how you might incorporate some lively, fun, interactive exercises into your projects. What we're calling a net positive approach to design. And it's a collaborative, innovative process that allows you to include more voices at the table right from the start. So we want to level the playing field, hear from more people, and really reach the best ideas with more input.
But before we get into the design, let's talk a little bit about where we are and why we need to do the things that we are. So let's do key global trends, starting with population growth, which, as you can see, in the recent decades has shot up exponentially. And the next one. We're also seeing increased urbanization. So we're seeing in 2050, more than 7 out of 10 people might live in an urban area. And next. We have also economic expansion and consumerism, which is a big issue that we have to address here as well. Increased risks and energy consumption are very important to acknowledge. As we can see here, our use of all of our energy sources, but primarily majority of them are fossil fuels still. We're also looking at increased global temperatures and CO2 emissions. These are on par with the other upward trends we've just seen.
So these major global trends have resulted in very serious consequences, and we're experiencing them right now, but they're only expected to get worse if we continue on our current course, business as usual. It's going to be really have some dire consequences. So we're seeing that we cannot operate in isolation. We're dependent on each other and other beings in ways we often don't realize. So recognizing our interdependent existence and how it's been ignored or forgotten in our history helps us understand how we've arrived at this point in time, and we're facing what some experts call an existential threat. Many of our most challenging issues are inextricably linked. For example, climate change is arguably one of the biggest issues humanity has ever faced. And we're feeling many of the effects today with devastating fires, floods, sea level rise, and rising global temperatures. Climate change is known as a threat multiplier, so it magnifies the other problems that we're also facing. And these risks includes things like air pollution, food insecurity, threats to our freshwater supply, threats to ocean health, loss of wild species, natural resource depletion, and due to dangerous land use practices like we heard about from Casper yesterday.
We're also seeing urban sprawl from different, all over the world. This is actually Waikiki in Hawaii. We have the problem of excessive waste and landfills filling up and becoming overloaded with toxic materials, chemical pollution going into the rivers and streams, the human health impacts on all of this. And we don't have to talk much about that nowadays because we really see that in real time. We also are looking at the social inequalities, including gender, race, and economic injustice. But with all of these issues, how do we really look at buildings and how do they measure up in terms of their impacts? And how can we look at shifting our thinking to embed resilience and making things better for everyone into our designs? We feel that one place to start is with a net positive approach. But what exactly is net positive? This graph shows the increase from sustainability or business as usual to sustainability, which is sort of a net zero, to regenerative design, which is making things better all the time. And so how do we harness this, and how do we use it in the construction of our communities that they can help heal the planet? And so we're looking at creating more habitat, collecting more energy, building soil, increasing societal resilience and wellness. And as designers and communities and individuals, we need to go beyond sustainability into the process of regenerating our landscape and building back our environmental, social, and personal capacity. But these environmental concerns have been with us for decades, and the design and construction industries continue to be destructive overall. So we must go beyond sustainability now, beyond green, beyond net zero, beyond anything we really had done before, to really arrive at a resilient response that we hope can eventually lead to regeneration of land and sea, human physical wellness, and societal peace and prosperity, while continuing to build robust responses to human and planetary needs. We'll discuss different issues and our recommendations on how to move beyond survival to thriving through a net positive approach that's meant not only as a metric, but a philosophy of improvement across a wide range of concerns, including food, wellness, energy use, fresh water availability, soil health, and other issues that underpin our ability to thrive. We wish to encourage hope, to use our human ingenuity and knowledge toward a systems-based approach for solving our problems. In this case, the development of urban living communities. Net positive is regenerative, resilient, flexible, and evolution. We continue to be amazed by the synergies such approach allows. We look forward to sharing our emerging perspective on all of this work.
So we have the opportunity to make big impacts, to create a new narrative where we adopt deep solutions. Design is a powerful tool that can act as a leverage point, which is a place within a complex system where a shift in one area can produce big changes in many other areas. So that's our really big goal for why we're doing this work, is to really create some change, and doing so calls for change in the way we think. So we need to have a paradigm shift about how we live in the world and interact with our environment and each other. So we have this chance to leave a lasting legacy, and one that improves both our social and ecological systems by leveraging the power of the ripple effect. And net positive is not just a numbers game or a list of features to check off. Our vision is to create inspirational spaces for a wide range of people to live, work, and connect. Beautiful communities that are harmonious with the natural world and serve as an inspiration for this new way of living. As we go through these ideas, feel free to drop your ideas in the chat and then think of some things, and we'll pause and take a little break and ask you at the end of these next few slides to see what your ideas might be, because after all, this is a collaborative effort, and we're being as collaborative as we can on Zoom. So we'll bring that up at the end here. So we envision cities, communities, and neighborhoods where we strengthen the connections between families, friends, and strangers that give life meaning, where renewable energy and water is harvested, captured, and used on site, which really is at the heart of this regenerative design, where there are beautiful and inspiring spaces to live, work, shop, and play, where building and design help heal the planet by creating perfect synergy between built and natural systems. Where there's healing spaces and the land actually heals itself and the people. Where there are affordable options for housing and where independent small businesses thrive. Where food is grown locally and sustainably on site, or at least nearby.
And where resilience and ecology are fundamental to our personal health, happiness, and productivity. And where clean air and water are abundant and freely accessible by all. Where community is created and diversity is embraced across age, gender, race, and economic factors. And there's me with mud on my face, as usual. And where activity is built into people's daily lives. And where the benefits clearly demonstrate a worthwhile investment for ongoing stability of local communities. And where the development itself both generates and demands creativity, where people are deeply connected to the process and the place, creating a site that acknowledges and celebrates our common fate, that opens doors to empathy and cooperation to help us tackle the great challenges we face. And so continue to put your vision down for what a resilient, net positive future would be. And please put your ideas out with short phrases in the chat there.
Yeah, and I think, let's see, we have a few minutes. So if somebody wanted to call out some ideas that they might have for what they see as possible for the future, and what's your vision for what you'd love to see? If you can just call out a word or a couple words.
We have from Megan, time and space to enjoy beauty and community. For me, it usually revolves around food and sharing food with people. That's a big piece that I think crosses a lot of boundaries. And anything to do with kids seems to always be a good thing.
Yeah, I love that idea of really creating these environments where we build into it just happenstance, social connections, which especially these days we're finding how important those social connections really are. And of course we need to do them safely, but it's really important that we can run into people and run into our neighbor and see their kids biking by. And so I think that that's also, for me, really, really key.
There's a lot of folks talking about economy and creating, regenerative economy. I think I totally agree. I'm living here and talking to you from New Mexico. It's a very rural state, and so I'm trying to create a rural economy option here using all these ideas in my current location.
Well, that's so cool. I really love this vision that we're creating here together. And net positive is an ambitious goal, but it's achievable right now. We have the tools and the technology to make this a reality. And it's just a new way of thinking about how we go about developing our communities. So we can take the best from what modern technology has to offer and learn from human nature and be guided by past civilizations and nature's genius to really learn about creating a new reality that works in harmony with our natural environment. The way we look at it, it's not about what we have to give up, but about creating something altogether new and something that's actually better. So we devised this wheel with 8 net positive areas of impact for developing a neighborhood or a community. And it's more of a tool to help you chart a course to net positive. And we chose this as a great place to start. There are lots of more formalized and standardized places that you can explore, like LEED and SITES and the Living Building Challenge, which have specific requirements for projects to meet more sustainable, their more sustainable goals for development. But ours is a bit different. The ones we've chosen are meant as an overview, a way to quickly assess a site's potential. And these can also be applied to a lot of different challenges that we face right now. And just in terms of thinking about your own personal impacts in the world. So we have aesthetics and function, community empowerment and user experience, renewable energy, water conservation, zero waste, food and nutrition, materials, and profits. So these are kind of all ways, how can we make these more net positive? And our goal is to expand access to resiliency and to show you an innovative process to tease out net positive solutions.
So in exploring this new paradigm in design and development, we'll show you a video of a charrette process in action. And we want to empower you to bring this process into your projects and daily life. In this case, our goal is to create a new mixed-use development incorporating residential, commercial, office, and dining. So think about an urban eco-village of a kind with housing, offices, retail, and gardens. And our instructions were to create a net positive site across the 8 measures that Jennifer just talked to you about. We wanted to go 3 stories max, mixed use, which means incorporating business and living together, walkable and a harmonious plan. And in this case,
Uh-oh, Joe froze.
becomes a really exciting new way of doing things. And next slide, we use a simple charrette kit of color-coded materials. The net positive. So keep going. Well, let me talk a little bit about this here on this slide. We call this a lightning charrette, and there's no talking, and you don't get attached to your contributions. It goes very, very quickly, and at the end, there's a 30-second free-for-all, and it's really very fun. So go ahead, and using a simple charrette kit, we can move through to the next level of design very quickly and in a very fun way. And you can see in this case that the charrette kit is made out of very simple materials. Jennifer made these, in fact, and we use very easy to access Jenga blocks, and it makes the most of it. Pieces of paper, little bits of yarn, and all of this together helps to make it easier to understand the process. And go ahead, Jennifer.
So as you'll see, these 3D materials keep the process light and fun, and really you're just building a quick little model on a site plan. The roll of paper on the side is a scaled site plan so that each Jenga block represents about 1,000 square foot building, and they can be stacked if you wanted to do those 3-story high. But the main point about this process is that everybody gets a chance to put onto the site plan what they think is going to make a net positive eco-village, like what we were talking about before, kind of our vision. And in this silent process, everybody gets a chance to take a turn. Nobody dominates, and it can be applied to other problems as well. So you can actually just take a piece of paper and have each person take a turn and take notes. The other thing is that this is timed, so it's very quick, very brief, and it almost uses another part of your brain to really engage in the process. Okay, so now I'm going to show you a video, if I can get there. Oops, let's see. Playlist. Okay. Of this process. So we'll go through this really quickly and see how it goes.
You want to go first, Megan?
Mom's gonna go first.
All right, Mark, get set, go. First person. Let's say switch.
Switch, switch.
Switch. Stop. Okay, then we're going to do a 1 minute free for all. So now everyone can work on the site at the same time, and we're going to have 1 minute to kind of clean things up. Okay. So that all happened in about 10 minutes. So it's really amazing what can be created. And here are what a couple of the participants said about it.
It's frustrating not to be able to talk because you can't explain why you're doing something or ask someone else why they're doing what they're doing. But it's extremely empowering to be able to achieve a completed site plan in just 15 minutes collaboratively. In fact, it's quite amazing how much you can achieve without talking, explaining, posturing, examining, and debating getting in the way.
So having a time limit really helped force me to not think, or just make a decision really quickly. And then I just sort of tap into a different place, and like an inner intelligence. And I think that really helps, that constraint, helps you access a different aspect of creativity.
So thank you for that, Jennifer. It always inspires me to watch this, and I just want to remind all of you to keep putting some ideas in the chat box there. I want to encourage you guys to keep the conversation going there. And as we move on, how do we see net positive differing from the conventional approach? When we look at our conventional design approach or solving other types of problems in our society, it's often a linear process. In this case, the owner has a site or a program, hires the designer or the architect, creates a design, which then goes out to the engineers and other consultants who add on their pieces, and then is sent to the contractor to bid and build. Each discipline is compartmentalized in their own silos, as we see here, and there's not much cross-pollination of ideas. And many of the members of the team are isolated in their own silo, not doing much collaboration during the design process. And that means more decisions are made by fewer people. Team members are only involved when it's deemed essential, and there's an emphasis on keeping the upfront or the beginning costs low. And all of this leads, though, to a diminished opportunity for synergy or collaboration in these types of projects, which is a shame. And it results in a lot of expensive change orders or solutions that don't really work, as we see here, and the so-called bridge to nowhere, as you might recall. Things like this are the type of problems that are actually inevitable in the traditional process, as modifications are made in reaction to issues that arise, and it's much more difficult to achieve the more ambitious net positive goals that we have with a conventional approach, because an early decision may shut down the possibility of getting a net positive farther down the line.
So getting to net positive requires systems thinking, where all the different angles and implications are explored early on. this holistic approach, such as with design thinking or the integrative design approach, is an inclusive, collaborative, goal-driven approach with the aim of achieving high-performance outcomes and widespread buy-in. So interconnections and synergies are celebrated and explored early on, and that's where the real magic gets created. Using a systems approach, the team is guided by trust and respect, appreciation for everyone's viewpoint, transparency at every level, and the ability to identify and resolve design issues early in the design process. So this really puts an emphasis on the upfront, the time that's spent upfront, with a lot more time spent there. And it increases the building's value through effective collaboration, increased efficiencies, minimized waste, and a unified objective. So our goal today is to fire up your growth mindset so that you can really delve into creative collaboration. And that, what is that process? Systems thinking focuses on multiple and sometimes conflicting goals throughout the process, and this can be messy. But exploring all the implications early on, achieving goals like net positive becomes possible. And we see that working together and bringing different perspectives to the table early helps create big shifts in the design and building process and other problem-solving processes. That's why the net positive charrette approach can be such a helpful tool. And it uncovers synergies and new ideas that usually remain hidden. And the creative collaboration becomes a tool that is integral to the problem-solving process. Developing a collaborative approach early in the project, such as this, helps you identify efficiencies, creative solutions, and many of these can lead to big cost savings. It can also help your team avoid mistakes, develop innovations, and discover the best solutions. So as you can see from this blurry graphic, really the two heads knocking together, it can be frustrating, but when you come together like that, you really come up with the best ideas. And if all team members are coming from this more open approach, you can come up with ideas that no one would have come up with by themselves. And the silent lightning charrette that we just showed you the video of mimics the silo effects of conventional problem solving, where everybody's in their own cubicle and not talking to each other. And in silence, it does have that aspect where you don't know what the other person's doing, you're just doing your thing, and there's no talking. But it also has a twist in that everyone is forced to participate equally all the times. There's no one getting more time on the model or on the piece of paper making notes or whatever. So even though there's no talking, everyone shares their ideas and opinions. And next, we're going to explore more about our vision of this new approach with specific information about how to achieve net positive. And then we'll show you a second charrette exercising, putting design thinking into action. So again, here are the 8 areas of focus that we've highlighted so that you can evaluate your site for net positive potential. And we're going to outline a target for each area. So first we have site planning, functions, and aesthetics. And the target is to create an inspiring and harmonious urban eco-village, meeting all of the net positive goals to regenerate the land. And then we've developed some rules of thumb that you can read through. So our second area is community empowerment for healthy, happy communities. And the target is our own well-being is directly linked to the health and well-being of the ecosystems in which we live. So the target is really to regenerate those communities that empower the people who will use the site. And here are some rules of thumb for how that can happen. And there are many other ways. Again, this is a collaborative approach. And so we welcome all of your ideas if you want to add some to the chat. Did we lose Joe? We lost Joe. Okay, I'll carry on. So the third target is on-site renewable energy capture and storage. So we're seeing a lot of that happening, and this is probably the easiest one to achieve net positive, especially with solar here in Southern California. And here are some other rules of thumb that we've developed. And I think the biggest takeaway on this is that we have the tools and technology to generate and capture enough energy to cover all of our needs and more. So it's really urgent that we get to net positive, especially in this area, in the next 10 years. Our fourth target is net positive water and water conservation. So with the water energy nexus and drought plaguing much of California in the south, this is another critical area, not just for water, but also for energy. And there's things, rules of thumb can be gray water use, sustainable agriculture, composting toilets, low water landscapes, etc. Target number 5, produce nutritious organic food on site. On-site food production has multiple benefits. Some people call these co-benefits. Access to the freshest, most nutritious food available, local job creation, physical activity, building social capital by working together in your community. And here are some of our rules of thumb. And then we have...
Okay. I'm back.
Oh,
Sorry
just back.
that.
Okay.
So the other thing we really want to do is to reduce the landfill, because construction really is destruction, and we see here how much of the problem is with the conventional construction. So we want to upcycle the materials coming onto the site. And so what we want to do is use a net positive waste reduction approach where we incorporate zero waste into the design, including compost bins, educating residents about trash, etc. Go ahead, Jennifer.
Oh, okay, sorry. So we want to also use materials that protect human health and the environment. So again, using materials that are repurposed, renewable, natural, non-toxic. And then here are some of our rules of thumb for doing that. And if you're going to start anywhere, I would start in your bedroom, since we spend hopefully 8 hours there sleeping. And also taking off your shoes before coming into the house, 2 little minor things.
So one of the things that came up in the chat was this idea of a regenerative economy. And so that's a big part of what we're talking about too. And so we want to create the target of creating a profitable mixed use site, but we want to reimagine what the definition of profit is. And so that we can really transition to an economy that really looks at the whole range of what it means to be thriving in the world. And the rules of thumb there are basically to redefine what profit is and realize that it's about returning any profits to the community. And how can a community embrace more of a circular economy approach that utilizes and acknowledges things like human capital, social capital, as well as the more typical ones that we consider now. But now that we know our targets, we're going to wrap up with some more images and video of a second charrette exercise, which was a systems thinking exercise in action. And at this point, the teams go back to their model. In this case, this was a team of city planners from the city of San Diego. And now that they know more about their target, they work together to bring in these net positive goals into their site design. And so they discuss, collaborate, calculate, and then they adjust their models according to these ideas. And then by combining these two approaches, the sort of the free thinking individualistic and then a more collaborative approach, they really arrive at a unique site-specific and innovative solution that even different teams using the same site plan can come up with really different approaches. So in this case, we're still in brainstorming mode, and the main purpose is to free up ideas, learn how to collaborate, and understand that there's often conflicting goals, such as water conservation and food production. But it's very gratifying to see the models take shape in 3D. But we've also used simple two-dimensional plans, as we see here, just laying out with tape and a piece of a site plan that students could work on this classroom floor. So what happens is the teams work together as individuals on the silent lightning charrette, and they have their time turns. Then they work collaboratively during the IDP charrette to result in their final plan.
And this,
Jennifer?
yeah, this two-step charrette process is really key to breaking through old boundaries to come up with new ideas and solutions. And it's fun to, we have our teams go back to the models after every couple of targets that we talk about. So it's this back and forth, really synergistic process, not a linear process. And so now we're going to show you how that works in action.
It could be like that's kind of a mixed use thing, but maybe mixed use needs to be up closer. Yeah.
And these are solar, right?
Those are solar. So we're just going to have houses with no restaurants? No, we have to have all the blocks. But maybe the restaurants, maybe these guys go up closer. Like if people want to enter the site who are not even living here, then they can use what we have going. Like, wouldn't it be nice if they're greeted by this kind of more commercial? Yeah. Something happened, like maybe there's a quad in here, and maybe this has food production. Yeah, that's cool. There's another. We're going to do egg here or landscaping? I think it should be landscaping. Okay.
And then we'll have a little brief descriptor of the final of that site.
We have a little landscaping entrance with a trellis and some vines, office space here. More landscaping. We have a childcare facility and we have bike rack. And then the first residences are here. We tried to keep a buffer on this side for the railroad track, and also not just to make this a dense grove, but we put in a gathering space of some sort in the middle of the trees. Some residents starting here and then moving on to the kind of focal point of gathering in the center. We did agriculture over here next to the railroad tracks, and our storage and maintenance facilities toward the back. We put in a starburst design, more or less, with the residents, having the higher residents on the street side, and then the agricultural area toward the back and railroad track area. And then we put in a community room in the middle of the residence, and we did not put in a pool, and we just made walking paths through the trees and kind of join the whole site together that way.
So here's another outcome of a little urban eco-village of tiny houses that Joe did with middle school students. So this exercise can be used for all age groups and, you know, from professionals to young students. So now we really see that it's up to each of you. And, you know, when you leave here, what actions will you take? What stories can you create to get us on the path to net positive? As Carl Sagan has said, don't sit this one out. Do something. You are, by accident of fate, alive at an absolutely critical moment in the history of our planet. So if you have some ideas about what actions you might be inspired to take, please write them in the chat. And we'd also like to open up the floor to any questions. If anybody has anything they'd like to ask, or if there's, I actually can't read the chat right now since I'm screen sharing. So Megan, if you want to, oh, she's coming to help me. I thought you could just read it out for me, but
Actually, you can.
okay.
And feel free to reach out to us if you come up with any questions. We've created a new outreach email here, netpositivecollaborative@gmail.com, if you want to talk to any of us. And our friend Jeff Bishop couldn't be here today, but he's a contractor and helps us to actualize some of these visions. And so we are now looking to do this type of work out there more and more in the world, helping people to do this charrette process, but also to design these types of communities as well.
So we have something like you mentioned earlier, just the economy being considered, which of course we totally agree. Regenerative agriculture, absolutely. Yesterday on this call, we watched Kiss the Ground about regenerative agriculture. And also Megan says that yesterday you were discussing the siloed nature of climate action organizations and how you can improve this. So yeah, this process maybe could be applied to get some new thinking even around that.
One of the things that we were talking about was the fact that we're kind of combining two different things here. One is resilient development and the idea of creating net positive results in the world, but we're also talking about a process. And we've thought, you know, how do we talk about these things together? And part of it is that, you know, there's the what, you know, which is the 8 metrics, but then there's the how, and how do we do it? I think we all know why, but how do we get there? Because the processes that most designers use are just not very effective, especially with those who are not trained in design. But all of us have the capacity to contribute. And that's what I think is so brilliant about the charrette process. It really does allow everybody from little kids to senior citizens to contribute on an equal footing. And it kind of makes it more democratic, which to me is exciting. And then the loudest voices don't always be the only ones that are heard, but the quieter ones can be heard too.
And Louisa says something I would be interested in is seeing building greenhouses or gardens on top of building roofs to make food more accessible to people. And she says she just doesn't know if it would work. And this is definitely being done and is a great strategy, especially in certain regions of the US. So definitely an excellent way to supply food, or at least you know, more biomass to our cities.
There's a friend of mine who actually works as an urban farmer, and he converts rooftops to farms in Oakland. So there's a lot of activity in certain cities. Oakland is pretty progressive in this way. In Jackson Hole, Wyoming, they made a whole vertical garden that grows more efficiently by a factor of 10 or 100, and it's attached to a parking garage. So we have a vertical farm right next to an extra piece of land on a parking garage. So we're seeing very creative uses of not just rooftops, but other urban spaces for growing food as well.
Well, any other questions or comments? We have a few more minutes, and we'd really like to hear from you what you thought about the process and any other thoughts.
I have a question. So just living in like a pre-existing built space, kind of like, do you have ideas for how to make that better without rebuilding? And also, given that there's a lot of private land that we don't have a lot of influence over what our neighbors do directly.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. I mean, the neighbor, let me tackle the neighbor issue first. That can be one of the biggest challenges because many of you have heard of the not in my backyard sort of idea where innovative ideas can't really move forward because of just pushback. So this is where the charrette process can come in, is it just allows everybody's voices to be heard and can help to kind of dampen down people's reactions to something new. And so we may not have influence over our neighbors, but we can talk to them. And sometimes groups of neighbors can get together and they can show an example to others. And I've seen this around creating common plazas in the city of Portland, Oregon, where neighbors on four corners of a street have agreed to create action that they share a public plaza, and that's called intersection repair. And so we can see that a few neighbors can actually make a big difference if they choose to work together. I've seen in San Diego, a group of neighbors on a cul-de-sac all put their landscaping together to create regenerative landscaping and capturing rain in their cul-de-sac. So we can apply these ideas, I think, in creative ways to help bridge gaps, to create new ideas, to heal at the smallest level, the planet a little bit at a time.
And Davis has such a great example with Village Homes, even though that was a project that started from scratch. You can apply some of those same principles like Joe was talking about, where you take down fences or see how you can go to a neighborhood scale on some things like even composting or growing some food. So there are different ways to really begin to apply these. And as we upgrade our homes, we can make choices that are more net positive with the materials that we choose, getting solar on our roofs, doing water collection on site. So there's on an individual home, it's a little bit more tricky. If you're renting an apartment, there's a lot less control, but for home ownership, that really works well.
Well, I think we're just about at time now, but it's been exciting for us to share this work virtually. We're still working out the technological bugs, and I'm way out in the middle of nowhere, so I apologize that I got dropped out of the conversation, but for a little bit there. But
before you go,
for having us.
We can run a few minutes over because we started late, so maybe like one more question, which is in the chat from Sue Zeski, who's asking about recommending a source for finding out if a green roof can be added to a manufactured home.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I can get back to you on that, Sue, because I need to research if it's about engineering, whether the manufactured home has been engineered to take the weight of a green roof, but that's an excellent way to add insulation, to collect water, and like I said before, with the biomass. So green roofs can be a really great solution. Thank you so much for having us, Megan and everybody else. And if you have further questions, you can email us there, or yeah, anything else?
Thank you so much. And I just wanted to remind everybody that, yeah, thank you so much.